was at that point that when I verged off and he also followed, that's when I kind of started getting really nervous.
And it makes me so uncomfortable.
He thought that he had disappeared, but when we looked back, he was still following us.
Like he just didn't get the memo.
It's really scary because you can't trust anyone.
And I just remember going through my head, like, what do I do? Like, do I start running to my car? Like, what if he runs after me? In my head, I was just going through like 1,000,001 scenarios of like what was going to happen to me.
In a city as diverse as Edinburgh, with a population of over 55,000 students, women and female identifying people should feel safe to walk freely in a place they call their home. The Meadows, which is a large park situated in the centre of Edinburgh, is a place accessed by thousands each day. However, as night falls, the crowds disappear and the park falls eerily quiet. The Meadows provides a direct access link across the city, and being on the doorstep of the University of Edinburgh's campus makes it a necessary route for students to take home. However, despite being in such a student-orientated area, the Meadows is a place most female students tend to avoid after dark.
Usually, the more people about, the more safe I do feel. It's only like at night time when it's like...
If you have the AirPods in or like any music.
Yeah, I always have one headphone out.
I'm always like looking
and I'm
behind
always,
my back,
I'm always
24/7.
Yeah, always on the lookout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I prefer to go out during the day compared to at night, and yeah, just because like I heard quite a few things about the Meadows at night especially, so I'm like very cautious about that.
So I'm a nurse, and previously I'd worked in the sick kids, which was like near the Meadows. So my shifts would kind of end kind of 8:30, 9 o'clock, going on to 9:30. And during the winter it was pitch black. So one night after my shift, I was walking through the middle of the Meadows, one of the most common paths. It was pretty quiet, and as I was approaching, there was a man just sat on a bench, but I didn't really think anything of him, so walked past him. And as I was kind of walking past him, I was maybe 1 metre, 2 metres away from him. He stood up and started walking the same direction as me. But it's Edinburgh, so I didn't really think anything of it. Kept on my journey towards my car. He kind of kept at the same pace as me, kind of not overtaking or getting slower. My car was like up a kind of side street, so I had to verge off like the main path. So it was at that point that when I verged off and he also followed, that's when I kind of started getting really nervous because it wasn't a more common path. So as I was kind of seeing my car, I could kind of see him in my peripheral vision, like still following. And I just remember going through my head, like, what do I do? Like, do I start running to my car? Like, what if he runs after me? Or like, how would I defend myself? Like, do I turn and like look at him? Like, in my head, I was just going through like 1,000,001 scenarios of like what was going to happen to me.
In a survey we conducted of 63 people, which 90% identified as women and other, and 10% identified as male, 13 individuals had experienced spiking. Only 2 of the individuals who were spiked were male, and the other 11 victims were either female or non-binary. 2 of the female and non-binary victims were spiked via injection. The others had their drinks spiked. When asked, none of the male participants said they were affected by what time of day or night they were out. However, 52.8% of women and others said that they feel very unsafe walking alone at night, and 28.3% felt somewhat unsafe. This is a drastic contrast to the male participants and highlights the targeted people at night.
So going to clubs, you kind of have to accept that going out you're going to get touched or like groped, and it's almost normalised in the club culture, and it's kind of laughed off. It's not really taken seriously. And as a woman, because we dress up and we wear the clothes that we want to wear, it somehow makes it okay for men to touch us and target us when we're in clubs. I just want to have a night out with my girls. I don't want to have to worry about being approached or harassed by men. And there's been occasions when men have made my group feel uncomfortable and we've had to leave the dance floor, and it ruins our night.
I had just a normal amount to drink, but I just suddenly began to feel unwell. People were hanging around us, and a few of the guys we had made friends with, they were buying us drinks. And it was fun at first. I was having a good time, but then I felt ill. The bouncers, we were told they didn't believe us. They thought I was just too drunk. The staff, they just didn't understand. We kept telling them I wasn't too drunk, something had happened, there was something wrong, but they just didn't listen. They just kept trying to kick us out, and eventually we left. But thankfully, someone outside decided to call an ambulance. They realised what was going on.
I bought a drink and I assumed it would be safe. The bartender made it up in a blender, didn't really think anything of it because it was like a cocktail type thing. But an hour or so later I began to feel quite sick, and then eventually I couldn't even see straight. My friends had to take me home and take care of me. And one of my friends that had had a sip of the drink started to feel a little unwell as well. They googled the symptoms and it aligned with being spiked. I don't know if it was the bartender who slipped it in my drink or if it was someone who passed by the table, but if my friends hadn't been there, then it could have been so much worse.
It was my birthday and a lot of friends had gone home. I stayed at the club with two guys who I thought I trusted. I ended up blacking out and don't have any memory really of what happened, except for coming into consciousness in the back of a police van, and there was no guys there. I still don't really know what happened to this day, and it makes me so uncomfortable going on nights out since.
It is clear to see that women still experience a different nighttime culture than men. This is why organisations such as STRUTSAFE and Street Assist are an important part of Edinburgh's nightlife. These free organisations rely on volunteers to run and offer services where people in need will call a central dispatcher, requesting either an escort home or for the dispatcher to remain on the phone with them while they are in transit. If the person is in need of someone to walk them home, the dispatcher will assign a pair of volunteers to meet the person and escort them to their destination. All volunteers are insured by the Board of Directors and background checked by Disclosure Scotland. Alice, who is one of the founders of STRUTSAFE, explains that it started with something as simple as making sure people can get home safely without risk of harassment or attack. We put the word out on social media to see if STRUTSAFE was something that people believed was needed. We received an overwhelming response and STRUTSAFE was born. Alice also discussed that STRUTSAFE want to protect those at risk and those who feel unsafe, especially women and non-binary people, queer people, people of colour and disabled people. In 2021, the government published a document stating funding available for interventions which focus on preventing violence against women and girls in public spaces at night. The main aims of the fund are to reduce incidents of violence against women and girls in public spaces at night, reduce the fear of violence against women and girls and improve feelings of safety in public spaces at night, including in the nighttime economy, and to build an evidence base of what works in improving women's safety in public space at night.
When you're alone, you kind of have to protect yourself.
I wouldn't want to walk alone at night.
I've kind of got stuff on my alarms and that I would press if something happens, you know. It's a bit sad that it's necessary, but I still feel like you should be giving these things out free, really, you know, for safety.
I would feel a lot less comfortable on my own if I was out in the dark.
I'm definitely kind of looking over my shoulder a little bit more and trying to kind of make sure no one's following me.
I just avoid being out on my own at night.
I always walk home with my keys in my hands, like just in case something happens.
I'd rather stay somewhere where there's lots of cars and lots of folk about, like main streets. I wouldn't cut through alleys like I would during the day.
While it is clear that things are headed in the correct direction with the development of organisations like STRUTSAFE, there is still a long way to go in eradicating the prevalence of harassment women face each and every day. These companies are unfortunately having to be set up to help protect women and others at night, but we feel as though it's a shame that such precautions are having to be taken just to walk home at night. Is there something that can be done to stop the fear?